Really living is knowing Jesus, knowing Him personally, and giving Him your talents and allowing you to be used by Him to tell other people about Jesus. Stay with me. I'll be right back with my guests for today.
When you embrace life's journey with a purposeful outlook and a focused perspective, when you have a passion for mission, extreme service, and abundant giving, a dedicated character with relentless strength and courage, when your spirit is at peace, that's really living.
My guests today, Fred and Diane Adams, are totally absorbed in giving themselves to Jesus and using their talents to bring other people to Jesus. In fact, you decided early on to be a full-time missionary outside of your homeland. Why did you decide that?
Well, I probably inherited it from my parents, because when I was only 2 years old, they decided to volunteer to serve way down in South Mexico near the Guatemala border at a little Adventist academy that was just being started up.
So you went there?
Well, I had to. I was just a little 2-year-old. And my father, he found a place to work. He was a logger, and they needed some trees cut and some lumber made for their buildings for the school. My mom, being a teacher, she taught English there. They just loved it. And my sisters, my 2 younger sisters and I grew up there, going to school, playing with the kids there, and just enjoying being missionary kids.
So your almost first language was Spanish?
I would say it was very close. In fact, my father had a regulation in our home. We could speak English to my mother, but we had to speak Spanish to each other and to my father. And if we disobeyed that regulation, he said something terrible would happen. And one time I talked to my dad in English, and he washed out my mouth with soap.
And that's why you speak Spanish with no accent.
Now I can speak Spanish fluently. My sisters speak Spanish fluently. To this day, we speak to my dad and to my sisters in Spanish, and it feels very uncomfortable to speak to each other in English.
How long were your folks in Mexico?
They served down there off and on over about 25 years as volunteers, and then after that, they've been another 15 years going down there on mission trips and a variety of trips, and helping serve at the school and whatever need was done. My dad, he has a chainsaw mill. They would put it on the back of mules and take them to remote villages, cut some boards and build a church, and that's just the kind of life that our family enjoys.
So it was in your blood?
It's in my blood.
Are you a missionary kid also?
Oh, no, I'm not. My family were not churchgoers normally, but I grew up going to church and knowing Jesus.
What did it feel like when you started dating this guy and he thought of what he wanted to be a missionary?
He told me right away. He said, "I'm going to be a missionary," and so I took Spanish. I made sure I continued taking Spanish. I'd been taking it in high school, and I got ready. And I had kind of wanted to be a missionary even before I met him, so it wasn't totally a new idea to me.
So you were in school back in the United States?
Yes, during my first about 4 years of elementary school, I was schooling and went to school in the United States because my parents volunteered in Mexico part-time. They had to earn a living by logging. We had a family logging operation in California. My parents have had several hundred acres of pine trees. So our entire family, my little sisters, my mom, she would drive the tractor. She'd be at the other end of a 2-man chainsaw. And we would load these big logs onto a truck and take them to the sawmill, and that's how we earned a living. And then when they had enough money, they would go down and volunteer at this school. So I did go to school in the United States for a few years, but then most of my education was down in Mexico, as well as my sister's, through a high school.
In college?
College, we came to Pacific Union College, where I got my my degree in industrial arts education.
And you also found a girlfriend.
That's where I found this attractive young lady.
How did you spy her?
Well, actually, I am and used to be a very shy, quiet person. And it was a challenge for me to interact, to find young ladies. And I was looking for someone who'd be a good missionary wife. And they're hard to find. So trying to be sociable, I would go in the cafeteria and sit down next to some young ladies and try to be friendly. I would go on hikes and things and try to be friendly with them. But I was having a hard time. So one time I went to a worship, and the worship chapel was almost empty. She was sitting by herself. She was feeling kind of sad because her previous special friend had kind of dumped her, and she just wanted to be alone and be gloomy. And I went and sat down next to her, and I said, "Is this seat taken?"
The whole place is empty. It's like, does it look like it's empty? I mean, does it look like it's taken?
And she said no, and so we introduced ourselves, and that was about it. She really wasn't interested in me at all. But over time, we started going together on singing bands. We'd go on hikes with groups of young people on Sabbath afternoons. And she always accepted my invitation, so I thought she liked me. But she had a different perspective.
Oh?
Well, the first time we went out, it was reverse weekend. And that time that he sat down next to me in the chapel, the young man that had been dating me during the summer saw us together. And I looked at him and was all, "Oh, there he is." And he just smiled, and then he kind of winked, and he looked at who was next to me. And then later that week, was before reverse weekend, he called me and he said, "Hey, you ought to ask out Fred Adams." And he said, "He's a really nice guy. I went backpacking with him." So I said, "Oh, okay." And so that's how it started. And he thought I liked him because I asked him out. And so he continued to ask me out. But I didn't have the heart to tell him, why I had asked him out.
But you had a talk with your dean, too.
Oh, yeah. And it was kind of awkward between us because we were both quiet. And this other guy had been all outgoing and fun to be with. And my dean said, "Well, still waters run deep," she said. And all that glitters isn't gold. And so she was right.
How long did it take you to find out that Fred was going to be a missionary?
Oh, right away. He showed me pictures when he was a student missionary of when he was a pastor in Bolivia.
And you had in mind of returning to Central America?
It was my goal to serve in the mission field wherever God wanted me. I wanted to serve in Latin America because that's where I grew up. I was very acquainted with the Latin American culture. That's where I felt very much at home. That's where my heart was. So I had my eyes specifically on someone who would be able to handle mission life. And she worked in the dairy. And I figured if she could work with those smelly old cows, cleaning up the manure, hefting those bales of hay, milking the cows, and all of that, I figured she could probably handle the smelliness and everything else that comes along, the rough life that comes with mission life.
How long before you became a missionary after you finished school?
I had intentions of going to the mission field just as soon as I could after I finished school, and I was working on it, letting anybody I could find, let them know that I was interested in serving in the mission field. And initially we got a call from the General Conference, said there's a position in Sudan, would you be willing to go there? And so Diana immediately started thinking about how she could decorate our little mud hut that we'd be living in and everything. But to my delight, just a year after we finished school, we got a call from the president of the same school where I had grown up, where my parents had started, to go down there to start up an industrial arts program.
The same school?
The very same school, and I was excited about that because that's where I wanted to be.
And you accepted that position?
He was jumping up and down.
Jumped up and down. That's the only time in my life that I was jumping up and down with joy. And we just started packing our things and getting together. And
you were equally happy?
Not like that, no, but I was happy to go wherever he went.
She loved me so much, she was just ready to go wherever I went.
So you left. And what did you do at the school?
I started up an industrial arts program and taught the young people how to work with wood, how to do practical things, how to remodel houses, how to build furniture, how to work in the garden, how to develop pictures, anything to do that was practical. I worked with them in that, all of the students and even some of the staff. And it was a thrilling, joyful experience for me. And besides that, I had learned how to make these burl clocks, so I taught the students how to make those. And then we started making plywood clocks, different shapes. The Republic of Mexico, the state of Chiapas where we were living.
Praying children.
Praying children
owls.
for churches, animals, trees, anything that they wanted, we made them. And it became a school industry that helped the students earn tuition money, and it was very profitable. These clocks were spread throughout the entire country of Mexico and other parts of the world. We made thousands of them, and they are still doing it to this day, 24 years after we started that program.
After you started the industry?
Yes.
But Fred, when you went that time, you walked.
I sure did. I was running all over the place. And I had my little Honda motorcycle. I was riding off in the hills and going to visit villages and zipping here and there, checking up on the lumber cutters and checking on supplies and checking on students working a project here and there and everywhere. And I was just enjoying life because I was active. I'm just an active person.
Since that time, many things have changed. When we come back, we want to find out about Fred and Diana and a wheelchair. We'll be right back. I'm talking with Fred and Diana Adams, missionaries in Mexico. You were teaching at a school. You were the industrial arts teacher and the manager of the new industry. You had a job at the school?
No, just, well, maybe part-time. They had some classes that they would have in the homes on practical things, and I shared what I knew about canning and making bread and gardening and that kind of thing.
What kind of school work did you take at college?
I started in music, and then I went to elementary ed, and that wasn't really what I wanted. And then about that time, we decided to get married, and he said, well, just take what you're interested in. So I finished with home economics because I just wanted to be a homemaker. So.
And a mother, and a wife. You were in school in Mexico as a part of the faculty.
That's correct.
What happened?
We were, our furniture making industry there at the school was expanding, and we needed a larger building. So we had students and staff and volunteers working on this huge building. They were putting up these great big huge wooden trusses. 20 of these trusses that weighed 3/4 of a ton apiece. Just getting the last one up, I was underneath coordinating, making sure they had the materials they needed and everything, helping translate for some of the American volunteers that were there. And suddenly, one of the trusses snapped, and all of them came crashing down, 15 tons of big wooden beams just crashing down. There was no time to move, get out of the way, anything. I was flung down onto the concrete floor.
The truss hit you.
Oh, a whole
Well, you did have
bunch of
time.
trusses.
You raised up your hands to shield
A bunch
yourself.
of trusses just instantly crashed down on top of me, knocked me down on the floor, and my spinal cord was just smashed, and I was instantly paralyzed.
You knew it?
From my chest down. I did not know it at the moment until they started lifting those big beams off of me and straighten out my body, and I realized I did have a tingling sensation on my body. And then when they started moving me around, I realized I didn't have any feeling from here down, from my chest down. And I realized that I was paralyzed.
Even before you saw anything of a hospital?
That's correct.
You were taken to a hospital?
I was taken to the little Adventist clinic up the hill nearby where they checked me, but they didn't have any facilities. So they put me on a board in a little tiny car, went 3 hours down the mountain over this very curvy, winding road.
And Daniel and I rode in the back with you, and Daniel was crawling all over you. He was 1.5. He thought this was a great adventure. He was having fun.
Ooh.
We got to the hospital. They took some x-rays and did some tests and everything. They said, you'll be walking within probably 2 or 3 months. You're okay. However, my sister, who was just finishing studying medicine at Loma Linda University Medical Center, when she heard about it, she said, get up here just as soon as you can. So they put me on a commercial airliner. They had to take out 3 rows of seats to put in the stretcher, flew me up to Loma Linda, did some tests. After they made the tests, the doctor came, said, you're not going to be building houses anymore. You're not going to be doing any more construction. You're paralyzed for life. Just really...
That was the explanation.
That was what I got. I was relieved, actually, that we had gone to Loma Linda where I could get top-notch care. The rest of my family, they felt totally devastated, and it was really hard on them. But I was thankful that I was in a place where I could get good care.
Did you break the news to your wife?
Oh, no.
Oh, she was there.
We were all there.
We were all there together when we heard the news.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
Just in shock. We just all started crying except for him. He was all at peace.
From the moment that those trusses hit me and I was laying there on the floor, I thought maybe I had some broken bones or whatever. I had no idea that I was permanently paralyzed. But I felt at total peace. God gave me the peace that I needed. And you know, before I got paralyzed, maybe several years before, we'd watched the Johnny Erickson movie about this girl who had a diving accident and became paralyzed, and she has a marvelous testimony and a TV and radio program and everything. And we discussed, how would I handle becoming paralyzed? Because I'm a very active person. I'd go backpacking, I'd hike to remote villages and preach in the villages and get inspirational stories and things. I'd ride around on my motorcycle. I'd go on camping trips. I'd take young people out on hikes and things. I was a very active person. And we discussed it, and we figured, well, God won't allow me to be paralyzed because He knows that I wouldn't be able to handle it. But the moment that those trusses smashed into me and I was laying there on the ground and I realized that I was paralyzed, I just felt at total peace because God was with me.
Fred, this program is called Really Living. Do you belong here?
Really living is taking what God has given you and making the best use of it. And when the devil took one thing away from me, I still have a lot left. I have my head. I can move my arms. I can't use my fingers, but I can move my wrists. I can move my arms. I still have my head. God has provided me through the insurance company with a van with hand controls. I can drive with a special motorized wheelchair that you'll be hearing about a little bit later. I can push my manual chair around a little bit. I have a little bit of arm strength. And I can take a pencil and strap it to my hand and peck away at the computer like a chicken.
Which insurance also paid for.
They also provided for me. There's so much that I can do. So I can still be really living. And I can still be involved in missions, even from a wheelchair, because of modern technology.
The Lord opened the way. Yeah.
Are you getting better?
No, I'm actually going downhill. I'm in severe pain all the time. And it's been getting worse. I have to spend more time in bed. And I have a laptop computer. When I can't stand sitting up and working at the desktop or doing anything else, I sit down at the laptop computer, or lay down in bed, work at that. I have a telephone right by the bed. I can handle telephone calls. I can coordinate projects. You mentioned earlier mission trips. I can do that from a lot of that from the bed, just using the telephone and internet and email and so on. I can be active in wherever I am.
Fred, you prayed that somehow this would get put together and you'd walk again. What happened?
One episode happened shortly after I became paralyzed that really helped me to understand a little bit better from God's viewpoint. And that is when our 2-year-old son got sick. We were living down in Loma Linda at the time, and I was still getting adjusted to wheelchair life and so on. And our son became really sick during the entire day. He was getting weaker. He couldn't keep foods down. He kept vomiting.
He couldn't keep liquids down.
He couldn't even keep liquids down, and he was getting very weak. And we telephoned the doctor, and the doctor said, well, what you need to do is not give him any liquids for 2 hours, and then just give him a little tiny sip. If he can handle that little sip of water, then wait another half hour or so, and then give him a little bit more, and give him increasing amounts, and he should be able to handle it from there. So it was about 7 o'clock in the evening. It's going to be 9 o'clock before we could give him a drink. And poor little Daniel, he was really thirsty. And he said, Mama, Wawa, peas, Wawa. And
juice.
She said, I'm sorry, we can't give you water right now because we need to wait for 2 hours. And poor little Daniel, he couldn't understand why his parents weren't giving him what he really needed, what he really wanted. And he started crying, and pretty soon, thirsty, please, juice. And we said, Daniel, you'll just have to wait. And it seemed like eternity for the time to go by. And we as parents, our hearts ached. We wanted to give him that water that he so badly needed and wanted. But if we gave it to him at that time, it would be the wrong time and it would do him more harm than good. So we were agonizing with him as parents and waiting for those moments to go by, for those hours to go by, and it just was taking forever. And suddenly it dawned on me, this must be the way that God feels. He sees our agony. He understands our agony. But He knows what's best for us. He knows when is the best time. I keep praying for healing, but maybe He has a better plan for me. Maybe healing isn't the right thing for me at this moment, so I just need to trust Him. And eventually the time went by. Daniel got the water that he desperately wanted, and he started improving. He got better. And it gave us a totally different perspective on how God sees things. We can only see just a little part of the picture. We're like little Daniel, who couldn't understand why his parents were keeping back something from him that he thought that he really needed.
It was perfectly good and healthful.
Right.
Anyway.
And someday we will understand also. Right now, we can't understand. We can't understand things from God's perspective, but someday we will understand. And all we need to do right now is trust Him. He will do what's best for us. And when the time comes, He will make everything clear to us, and we'll say, oh, that's why you did that. Now I understand.
You had a different style of husband all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I want to hear from your perspective what happened. We'll be right back. Don't go away. I'm talking today to Fred and Diana Adams. They were missionaries in Mexico when a terrible accident happened. The accident left you paralyzed. And through a sequence, you found out more and more about being paralyzed and what this was going to mean. Did you wonder at all about how this would affect your relationship with your wife?
Actually, I had read stories about people who had become paralyzed and their spouses leaving them. And even though I knew what the answer would be already, as soon as she saw me paralyzed in the little clinic up the hill from where I got paralyzed, I looked at her and I told her, I may be paralyzed for the rest of my life. Are you willing to live with me like this? Or...
Oh, that's a heavy question.
Yeah.
What kind of answer did you give?
Well, there was no question. That will always, we were married forever, and I was in love with him, and I still am, and I couldn't picture myself living apart from him like that. And besides, how could I live with myself knowing I'd left him and when he needed me the most?
What is your role now? What is your day like?
Well, I get up and have prayer first, and then I take care of his needs for the day, get him dressed, wash his hair. It's just a daily routine, like brushing your teeth or combing your hair.
It's a lot more than that, though.
Yeah.
She has to range my legs every morning and every night.
Exercise his legs.
Exercise my legs. She has to check and make sure that there are no pressure sores forming, that
He's never had pressure sores, though.
Yes, I've been very blessed not having pressure sores, that nothing unusual is going on, and sometimes, unfortunately, being paralyzed like I am, I make messes, just like a little baby.
It's like a baby, which...
Except...
You know, women are...
They're a lot bigger, and...
That's in us to clean up messes.
Poor thing. She has to clean up those messes.
Somebody has to, so...
And that takes a lot of work, and that takes a lot of love.
But I'm blessed. I don't have to work outside the home because we're okay financially. I really feel blessed that way. And we have so much time together than we would if he wasn't paralyzed. So it's kind of a blessing in a way.
That's our quality time together. That's when we read. I'll read while she's working on me.
He reads the women's devotional to me.
I see.
Yeah, I get in on the women's devotional.
Plus the regular devotional. And he's not busy on the computer or anything, so that's when we talk a lot. And it's good.
And do you have help at home with him?
No, we haven't needed it yet.
Just the two of you?
Just the two of us, yeah.
How did you get into this chair? How are you able to get to this chair yourself?
When I was in rehab, I spent 6 months surgery and rehab and everything at Loma Linda. They helped me to build up my few muscles that I have left in my arms. Some of them are totally atrophied. If I didn't have this sweater on, you would just see skin and bones and hollow places on my arms. I don't have a whole lot of strength, but they taught me how to use the muscles that I do have to do enough jobs to be able to move around. And so at first, like for eating, they had a special spoon that I could use and put on my hand. And that was just a struggle just to get up enough strength to get up to my mouth and get it in and wear me out. And then chew my food and then get another spoonful and get up to my mouth. It was very tiring and had to spend weeks and weeks in rehab building up those muscles. Brushing my teeth, strapping a toothbrush to my hand and getting all the corners and everything. That was tiring.
Like our son learned to brush his teeth about then too, so they learned together, kind of.
And then transferring from the wheelchair to the bed, rolling over in bed, getting back into the wheelchair without falling on the floor, and then eventually transferring into a vehicle so I could drive.
You could drive.
Yeah.
I could drive, yes.
He's a better driver than I am, so I'm really glad.
I love driving. I have a handicap van with hand controls and a ramp and everything. I can drive those curvy mountain roads in Mexico, and I like going off-roading and everything else.
But in wild traffic, too, he'll pass trucks and things in a scary situation that I wouldn't know if it's safe to pass or not, but he's good at gauging
I don't
speeds
like
and distances.
the Southern California wild traffic, I'll tell you that. I'd rather drive on some back roads in the mountains. But I really enjoy driving. It's fun, it's fulfilling, and it gives me freedom. And I have driven back and forth to Mexico since I've been paralyzed, I don't know, several dozen times. I have over 300,000 miles that I put on my handicap van. In fact, I wore out one van. I'm on my second one already.
Diana, do you just get exhausted with this work?
No, well, sometimes when I'm trying to do a lot of other things around the house or in the garden, I do if I don't watch out. But I need to, when I just take care of him, I'm not, no.
Do you ever have a time when you're alone? Does Fred go off by himself? Do you into the woods or wherever you go?
Every now and then he'll go to his parents or...
Does that worry you?
Yeah, I worry, what if he doesn't come back? Or
Yeah,
what if something
I'll go
happens?
running off in my tractor wheelchair, which we'll be talking about shortly.
Yes, that bothers me because sometimes it comes derailed and then he's
Then
stuck.
I have to use the cell phone and call her, come down, please help me, I'm stuck someplace. And so she'll come and have to get out the wrenches and the tools and everything.
Because he takes it beyond what he's supposed to, so it's not the chair's fault.
It's my fault.
He likes to push things
Because
to
I
the
go
limit.
places where no wheelchairs are supposed to go. Tractors aren't even supposed to go. Because I'm an adventure action type person.
All of these tools you talk about, you're a home ec person.
Yeah.
But you fix his wheelchair.
Yeah, amid a lot of complaining sometimes, but he's pretty good at it, and he explains to me how to do it, and he's patient with my impatience, and he coaches me through it, and I'm able to do it, and then I really feel good about it. So it's been a good learning experience
And
for me.
sometimes the ramp will break and I'll be stuck inside the van and she has to fix it so that I can get out of the van. Sometimes we're in 100+ degree heat out in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of nowhere. The air conditioner quits. I have to tell her what to do to get it to work again.
And I hate motors and hot running motors, and yeah, this one time it was really scary, but I prayed and I was upset and I was impatient. How come you do this to me? Why are we out here in this middle of nowhere? Why don't we go the, more populated route? There'd be more help there. And
I
but
like
when
to see new places.
I popped open the engine and I was actually able to see the little wire that had gotten loose. The Lord helped me, I guess, and I fixed it. So whenever these things have come up, the Lord's always helped us through it.
You're a mechanic.
Yeah.
And a nurse. And the cook.
Yeah, I like to cook, though.
And a very caring, devoted, loving wife.
How long are you willing to do this?
Just forever, until he's healed. And I don't know if that's when Jesus comes or before. I know the Lord sometimes has surprises up his sleeve, so I'm not expecting one thing or the other. I'm just waiting on whatever God sees best to do. And he's still himself. He wasn't really a new person when he became injured. He actually grew more in a lot of areas. He's, like I said, he's really smart and can coach me through mechanical things. He has a good sense of direction and knows how to find his way around with maps and things, which I am totally lost. He's thoughtful of others, always thoughtful and patient with my grouchiness sometimes. He's just he's a good man, and he's still my hero.
What do you do during your days? How do you spend your time?
I find it most fulfilling to be able to serve others in any capacity, in any way. Working at the computer, especially being involved in missions. Also, if someone needs community services, needs some signs or something on the computer, I enjoy doing that for them. A neighbor needs me to do a task on the computer for them, it's very fulfilling to me. I get a phone call from Mexico saying, there's a nursing student, Roxana. She is almost finished, but she needs some funding to finish her school. I have the connections. I can make the phone call that can get her the money so she can graduate. Now Roxana has graduated. She is serving others because of just little things that I am still able to do, and that is really living for me. That is so fulfilling.
We'll be back in just a moment. Fred, you came here in a wheelchair that you yourself was pushing along with the wheels. But you apparently have another wheelchair with a motor?
That's right. I'm very limited to where I can get around with this, usually just on sidewalks and flat surfaces. And being an adventurous, active, outdoor person, I'm just too restricted in a chair like this. So I'm blessed that the insurance company provided me with a chair that's motorized and it has treads like a tractor. That thing can take me...
Like treads, like a caterpillar?
Exactly. And that can take me places where no wheelchair can go. And it even takes me places where it's not designed to go. I go in the snow, I go in the mud, I go in water. You've been to Redwood Camp Meeting? There's the Eel River there. I went across the Eel River 3 or 4 times.
In the shallow place.
In the shallow parts.
In your wheelchair?
In the chair, yes. I climb up mountains. I go up on the Rubicon Trail and where the Jeeps go. I can go in sand. I can go on the beaches without getting stuck. I can go in gravel. I can go through the woods. I can go up and down hills up 40–50% grades. I just love that chair because it takes me places. I've taken it on mission trips and gone through the jungles with the children running alongside me on the jungle trails and just flattening down the jungle growth and everything, because that's like a bulldozer. And I love it.
Are you afraid of falling out of it?
No, I'm not. I've taken it some places where actually it's a very stable chair.
He's seat belted in.
And I have a seat belt, so it's safe.
I saw a picture of you out in the woods pulling a wagon.
Yeah, I pulled firewood with it. And also, I tow a mower behind it, and so I can mow grass through our orchard and around our house and everything. Just fasten the mower and have my wife start it up, and away I go, and back and forth, back and forth. Oh, I love that. And one thing I mentioned earlier, I'm in pain all the time. When I'm in that trackabout, when I'm mowing grass and things like that, I don't feel the pain. The pain is gone. I am just enjoying myself so much and being productive. in a different way, and I just love it.
You were talking about using a computer, but I also heard you say your fingers don't work.
That's right. And so what I do is I have a pencil that I strap to my hand with the eraser end down, and I just peck at the computer keyboard with that. And I can use my thumb to hold down the shift key or whatever. And I do most of my work on the computer. I help with newsletters for several mission organizations. I do web pages for several mission organizations, along with our own family website, adamsamigos.net. And it has really been a blessing to reach out to people through the internet, through web pages.
How fast can you type?
I timed myself one time and I did 40 words a minute.
That's pretty fast.
It's a skill that God gave me.
So you have organized some trips to go back to Mexico.
Yes, I have had the privilege of organizing and leading caravans of vehicles through Mexico.
Since you've been in the chair?
Since I've been in the wheelchair. Going to some remote villages that I'd hiked to before I'd been paralyzed. Now they have some very rough roads to get to them. We had medical teams, we had construction teams, helped to build school classrooms, helped build churches, and a variety of other things. Some of those places we got into, and then to get back out again, the roads were so muddy that we were slipping and sliding, and they had to put a rope on the van and pull on it, and we just had a lot of fun adventures out there.
So the groups that you've taken are groups of volunteers to do a specific project.
Exactly.
And a part of your ministry now is organizing those trips.
That's something that I did several years ago. Now I'm concentrating more on websites and letting other people do the organizing because it's a very challenging task.
Have you gone on these trips too? You must have.
I have to go wherever he goes. Yeah. And I wasn't that excited about it, really, to tell the truth. But I prayed and I said, Lord, I'm willing to go because this is what you want. And so I'm trusting you to help us through this. And he did. And whenever we needed help or anything, the help was there. So.
You have managed a ministry of volunteers?
Yes, I've been working with Mission Projects Incorporated, an organization that supports lay workers down in Mexico and in Africa and in other places, along with indigenous schools, a hospital in Belize, and student aid and church construction, a variety of projects. And I organize or monitor the projects in Mexico.
People who are interested in finding out about this organization can find it on our website, and there you'll find the information on how to participate in this organization. How many things have you been responsible for building since you have been in the chair?
Well, mainly I have been coordinating a network of laymen who take the gospel to unreached areas. And the rewarding part is to see the reports every month that they send in and to listen to or to read the miracle stories that what God is doing through them and to see the results of their work going to remote, unentered places where they have persecution and all kinds of challenges and everything. And as a result of their work during the past 18 years or so since I've been paralyzed and been able to help coordinate this program, these volunteer laymen who get a small stipend from donors here in the United States have baptized nearly 14,000 people and organized 265 new congregations, most of them in completely unreached areas.
Since you've been in this chair, Fred,
Since I've been paralyzed,
have been responsible for how many churches?
I have not been responsible. The Holy Spirit, working through volunteers has done this, 265 new congregations.
And how many baptisms?
Nearly 14,000.
God has blessed your ministry.
That is why I am totally convicted that God allowed something bad to happen to turn it into something better. And that's why I do not resent being in a wheelchair. If I can do more for God being in a wheelchair than being able to walk, I'm happy to be here in a wheelchair as long as God can use me, because that's my whole goal, is to serve God, to reach out to others. That, for me, is really living.
We'll be back in just a moment. You have a son. How is he related to this?
He's taken it very well, although growing up, he was very active, very challenging to train.
A lot like his dad.
Yeah.
Well, even more so. He was stubborn and strong-willed, and in fact, there were times when we felt like total failures as parents. And fortunately, he has grown up, and now he is 22 years old. He has chosen to follow God's way. He is training to be a mission pilot. He's working with the David Gates program down in South America. He's been down to Venezuela twice. In a couple of months, he's planning on heading down to Bolivia. And what's thrilling about it for me is that we can relive missions through our son Daniel as he sends his pictures and shares his experiences. That is really living for us.
Someplace there's a wife with a husband that's not the same as the husband she married. What do you have to say to her?
I would say, trust in the Lord, and He'll help you. He'll help you whenever you need help with being strong or being a mechanic or being cheerful. The Lord's right there, and He doesn't ask us to do anything that He isn't going to help us to accomplish. And you'll find so many ways that your relationship will actually deepen and that you can still be in love, and just hang in there.
Frederick, you going to walk again?
I certainly am. I don't know if God's going to heal me before Jesus comes again, but when Jesus comes, I'm not only going to walk, I'm going to run, and I'm going to fly too.
It'll be a great day.
It certainly will, and I'm looking forward to it.
However, in the meantime, you seem to be really living.
I certainly am. I have been really blessed by getting emails from former students in Mexico from many years ago, 25 years ago, who have found our family website, adamsamigos.net. They have found information about the school where they had their roots. Some of them have actually left the Lord, but upon finding that information and seeing that I am still serving the Lord, they have been inspired, and they are taking steps to return to their roots and to return to God. And that for me is so fulfilling. That for me is really living.
Really living isn't about your surroundings. It is about your relationship to Jesus. Right now, I invite you to accept Jesus all over again. Tell Him you want Him to be your Savior. Right now, say, Jesus, I give you my life. I want to serve you. And Jesus will make a difference in your life. And then you will be really living.
If you've enjoyed today's topic on Really Living and would like more information, please visit us online at reallyliving.tv. On our site, you can also obtain directions for ordering DVDs of today's program, access updated schedule information, or submit story ideas. We look forward to your visit at www.reallyliving.tv.